Welcome to Icon 2016, coming to you live from Gallagher Convention Center, powered by always-on Wi-Fi, super-fast Wi-Fi, where and when you need it. Now, we have a particularly special panel at the moment. So we have a colleague who would like to make a particular announcement. Editorial?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Raymond E. Feist.
Thank you. So those years spent in radio school paid off.
He does have the right voice. But before we get into questions, because this panel is just going to be fan questions for Raymond, we also have another special guest. Icon for a number of years has been supporting essay guide dogs. And we have Kenobi, who happens to be a Feist fan. I think he's at least eaten one of Raymond's books. And Kenobi,
my pleasure.
Kenobi is currently going to be a service dog. Currently training as a service dog. There we go. So I believe Kenobi loved your first book. It was tasty. It was lovely.
Very good. Yeah.
So please do support Essay Guide Dogs. They do have a stall here at Icon 2016. $25 gets you a ticket into the draw where you can win a car. You can also get more information, www.guidedogs.org.za. So thank you very much, Kenobi. Round of applause for Kenobi.
And black labs are a great family dog. Good family breed.
Black labs?
Labs, Labrador.
Yep, great family dog. Right. Okay, so Raymond.
Sure.
They're going to ask you a bunch of questions.
I know,
very
damn
shortly.
them all.
However, I'm going to take a slight liberty with the first question.
That's my shock face.
That's your shock face? Yeah? That happens all the time. Listen, you need it because you're just plainly pandering to the crowd with the outfit.
Yeah, it's 'cause some fool told me I had to wear a South African. Actually, I have 3 of these, and he saw the first one. I hadn't met Les in person, so I wore it when we met at a restaurant in San Diego, so you know who I was.
The beard wasn't going to be enough.
Yeah, right. Well, that was the actual team jumper. But the one I never wear is one I actually found at a memorabilia store, which I have an '85 World Cup autographed by the entire team. It's one of my, I collect sports memorabilia, but that's one of my faves.
Cool. All right. Well, here's how we do segues. We try to do them professionally. At that time that we met in San Diego, you told me a story which gave me chills. It was inspiring, and it was fantastic. And so now I'm going to ask you to tell that story again, because there are some particular points around how Magician came into being.
Oh yeah.
Can we start with that story, please? And I'm just going to sit here and maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, part of the story was I got an amazing amount of support from my friends, and when I began to suspect I actually might have something going, was when I was out of work and my friends actually paid my rent and bought me groceries so I could finish the book. And that's when you know who your friends are. And then after I paid them back, they let my kids go. No, okay. Magician was something that I thought I would take a bash at. I had no idea it would lead 34 years later to this. It began with the idea that I was going to write something that I loved to read when I was a kid, what was referred to back in my childhood as a ripping yarn. I wanted to write a story of daring do and high adventure, because my influences were Sir Walter Scott and Robert Louis Stevenson and the pulp guys and Anthony Hope, Prisoner of Zenda, L. Rider Haggard, She and A. Merritt's Moonpool and Ship of Ishtar, that kind of stuff. And I wanted to get into that with no idea whatsoever how to do it. So I started with a character, and the first character I thought of was Prince Arutha. And I had the idea of this sort of brooding Hamlet-like character without the impulse towards suicide. I said, okay, I created the world of Cry-D, and then after fiddling with that for a while, I realized that I had a perfectly good game environment world that I've been working on with my friends for 4 years. And I said, hey guys, do you mind if I borrow Mechemia for this book? And they said, oh sure, what the hell? If we ever publish the game, it'll be good publicity for us.
So there were no discussions of royalties or anything.
Yeah.
Just publicity.
Yeah, just publicity.
Nice.
And since we've gotten all the lawsuits set aside, we're talking to each other. And no, they're great friends. So we had a blank spot on the map called the Far Coast. So I took Cryde and I dropped it on the Far Coast, and suddenly I had the Duchy of Cryde. So I had the Duke, and I had his 3 kids. And the opening scene in Magician originally was Aruth is in a bad mood, and I hadn't even figured out why he was in a bad mood. Just, I wanted him brooding on the docks, or, oh no, it's a long breakwater, you know. So I put him out there, and this pirate ship comes in, and they knock him in the water unconscious, and he swims out, and he gets where he needs to go, and finds that, you know, they killed his dad, and they wounded his brother, and they abducted his sister. So now he's got to go rescue her. Okay, fine. That was my original setup. And then I thought, wait a minute. Okay. Yes, he's going to rescue the princess, but it's his sister. And this is long before the Lannisters, so I had to have a different, you know, love interest. So being wholly original, I decided, oh, I know, the kitchen boy who's in love with the princess, because nobody's ever done that one before. So I think at this point you can agree that Ray was sort of flailing around looking for a story. And then, oh, hell, who's the kid? And so my immediate thought was he was going to be comic relief. He was going to be, you know, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, which is weird when you think that I went from Hamlet to Don Quixote, you know, without even thought.
Yeah.
Which suggests that possibly one of the things that you should strive for as a rookie writer, and before I go any farther, hands in the air, wannabe writers. Oh, pity the fool. So, like I said, I had no idea what I was doing, but I was having fun. So I went, okay, gee, I better figure out who this kid is. I know, I'll call him Pip, because my best favorite Dickens novel is Great Expectations. Oh, hell, Alan Dean Foster wrote a book called The Terror and Krang and a couple of sequels with characters Flinks and Pip. Shoot. Let's see, what's a good, short, pointless name for, Pug. And I wasn't even thinking of the dog. I was thinking of American slang for boxer, tough kid. You know, he's a pug. Okay, who's Pug? I know, we'll introduce him using something my dad told me, which is give your reader somebody to care for, and I'll take this kid and I'll drop him in a world of hurt in the first chapter. So I know, I'll put him on the beach and he gets trapped at high water in a hurricane and stuff, and he barely gets, you know, he almost drowns, and then I know I'll have a wild boar attack him. And let's see, I know I'll have this hunter, rescue him, and then I know the hunter lives with a magician. Fine. So, literally, this is how this is going. This is how my brain is working. And without pharmaceutical help, guys, I couldn't afford drugs. Yeah. So I get to the point where we get to the cabin, and there's Meacham, and Colgan, and Pug, and the crystal ball scene. You know, I'm looking at the orb, my Panettiere, whatever you want to call it. And suddenly, Pug makes something happen. And I go, oh, okay. Didn't expect that either. I'm as surprised as Colgan is. And then things just start happening. And I go, oh, wow. The kid's going to be a magician. By the way, at the time, I had no title for the book, so I didn't know where it was going. It was like, you know, generic adventure number 1. You know, version 3.0. So I got to the point where, okay, so what do they talk about? What is this magician going to talk about? So, okay, I don't know how it is in South Africa, but in the United States, when an adult is stuck talking to a kid and has no idea what to say, the question is always, okay, so what do you want to do when you grow up? Oh, okay. He wants to be a soldier. You know, so I get through that scene. Oh, why isn't he a kitchen person? Oh, I know, they have a choosing, and then I come up with that whole idea. You know, well, it's a small culture. So you learn backup skills by hanging out with other things, and if you're really good at something, the master will select you on the choosing day. And then I got into the whole stigma of not being chosen and that whole thing because I really wanted to have some pressure, because at that point I realized, he's going to be Colgan's apprentice. Okay, that'll work. He's still going to go off adventuring with Arutha to save the princess and be the love interest. Oh, well, I guess I now have to show the choosing. Okay, that's the next chapter. So the opening with the pirate ray keeps moving backwards. So what was chapter 1 is now chapter 4. Because after the choosing, I've got to set up a relationship between Pug and Carlene. So we'll do the chapter with the trolls attacking. Okay. Well, damn it, if I do the raid, I don't know. I'm blanking. So I'm talking to my friend Steve Abrams, and we're talking about the book. And I said, the kid's going to be a magician. And Steve just out of nowhere says, hey, why don't you tell the story about how the greater magic came to Machemia? I went, okay, how did it come to Machemia? He said, through a rift. Okay, isn't that a valley in North Africa? No, not that rift. Hole in space-time to a different world. Okay, well, there go the pirates. I know, a shipwreck. Okay, so now you see how magician began to unfold and the elements came together, which is, by illustration, my way of saying, don't overthink what you're doing. Play with it. Back in the day, it was, Scotch tape and scissors. Now it's word processing, store that file, delete. Now, but don't ever throw anything away. That entire thing that I thought of as the opening originally went into the drawer. Did anybody here immediately recognize the similarities between that and the opening to King's Buccaneer? See? It finally showed up 5 books later. So that's how it started. And as it went, I determined to see where the story was going to go, see how it was going to go. So I'm going to do another minute or two on the publishing. So we fast forward, I finished this draft, it's like 680 pages, and I get it to my agent, who gets it to a publisher, who calls me after being out there shopping around for a couple of years. Adrian Zackheim, a publisher at Doubleday, calls me and says, I really like the book, and my agent had warned me, he likes the book, but he's got strong editorial requests, which is code for he ain't going to buy the book unless you do what he tells you. So I'm really thinking, well, it's a big manuscript. He's going to want me to cut it. What can I cut out of there? Gee, I can snip this and that. So the phone rings. I call it. It's Adrian. He says, Ray, it's a very big book. I went, okay, here it comes. He goes, I think it could be bigger. Really? And he said, yeah, I got some requests I think might work because it's almost there. Okay, shoot me your shopping list. Well, I think you need a character in disguise. Somebody who, sort of like Aragorn, sort of like Strider. Somebody who isn't who you think he is at first. Okay, boom. That's how Martin Longbow was invented. I think Pug should have a contrast rival for Carlene. It shouldn't be just a simple one-on-one. Boom. Welcome, Squire Roland. After Pug is abducted, we don't see anything about what happens at the war. It's all on Kelwan. Okay, well, at the end of the first half, we'll put in the Siege of Cry-D. And, okay, a bit into the second one, we'll do Arutha's journey to Krondor, where he meets Anita. See all the stuff that wasn't in the manuscript at first? Sometimes listening to other people's suggestions is really worth your time. One unintended consequence of that set of requests. Oh, and then there was one about, after the war, after the betrayal, when they closed the rift, you got all this sort of like empty who gives a damn. I mean, they're all walking around being nice to each other. So I take Martin and I make him the illegitimate son, and suddenly the whole who's going to be the king goes all the way to the end and keeps the tension up there. And then the unintended consequence is, in Magician, there's a scene where Laurie and Lucano are taking the Emperor's message to the king. And they're trapped in Krondor by Guido Bastira's men and they want to escape. And I introduce this character who's sort of loosely based on the Artful Dodger named Jimmy the Hand. And he's in one scene. So I'm doing the Arutha goes to Krondor, and Guido Bostieris's henchman, Jocko Radburn is there. And by the way, that was the most Australian, South African, British colonial name I'd come up with, Jocko Radburn. Scotch ancestry, obviously. And I said, okay, well, how do I get Arutha to the smugglers and, the people hiding Anita? Oh, I know, the kid, Jimmy, and the mockers, okay, the thieves. And suddenly there's Jimmy tapping on Arutha's shoulder, saying, you did a good job, but they're going to find you, come with me. Little did I know at that moment, I was just introducing one of the most popular characters I ever wrote. My biggies are Pug, Thomas, Arutha, Jimmy, Mara, and then whoever else you like in that group. But those are my top 5. And to be honest with you, along with Amos, Jimmy was the most fun to write. Those two guys, I started smiling when I was writing Amos's dialogue or Jimmy's dialogue. And that's part of the pleasure of being a writer, is you entertain the hell out of yourself, even if nobody else likes it. Then it went in, and I waited around, and my editor called me back and said, fantastic. This is exactly the book I want. Now cut 50,000 words out of it. As Faulkner said, kill your darlings.
I think...
So I started scribbling, and here's the thing. I learned how to tell more story with fewer words. I got a writer's 2, 3, 4-year education in 6 weeks. And that is why, when I tell people, trust your gut, go where you want to go, experiment, try, because magician looks like it makes sense from front to back, right? Now you know I had no idea what I was doing when I started. Okay, that's the story.
What do you guys think? So now this is a fan Q&A, so if I didn't ask questions, or if I didn't allow questions, I'd probably be lynched. So Victoria, does anybody have any questions for Raymond after that?
If not, it's going to get really quiet in here.
All right, we have a question over there. Can I ask you to stand up and tell us your name, please?
My name's Guy.
Okay, I can't hear you. What's going on with that?
Okay.
I'm hard of hearing anyway.
My name's Guy. Bit of a strange question.
Oh, and hold the mic close. If you're moving it around, trust me, I'm going, what?
Sorry. Up against your lip.
My name's Guy. Back, ages and ages, back in the 90s, you actually released 2 games, Betrayal at Crondo and Return to Crondo.
Right.
Have you ever thought about releasing any more?
Okay, I'm going to stop you right now and cut off a whole bunch of questions. Never ask a writer, did you ever think about, I have nothing to say about it. If you want to come with like Electronic Arts or Blizzard and pay me money, I'll sell you the rights. I did not, let me tell you how Betrayal at Crondo got done. I got a phone call from a wonderful guy named John Cutter who worked for Dynamics, which at that time was a wholly owned subsidiary of Sierra Online. And John said, we're doing a fantasy game. We've never done one before. And a lot of people here really like your books, so we want you to write the story for the game for us. And I said, John, you can't afford me. Oh, we got a pretty good budget. I said, John, you cannot afford me. But let me explain licensing to you. They wanted me to write an original script in an original world. Okay. And instead I said, no. We're going to take a story and we're going to stick it between Darkness of Sethanon and Prince of the Blood. Because we can put Jimmy and Lockie in it, and off we went. So, yes, I have thought about games, computers, online. I've thought about movies, television shows, Broadway plays, musicals, paper dolls. I mean, yeah. In other words, I love the naivete. Dear Mr. Feist, I'm online, I'm on several boards and things. Hey, Mr. Feist, have you ever thought about making a movie? Wow, no, what a great suggestion. Yeah, of course I have. I grew up in the business. So it's about licensing. So understand, if it's not a novel, if it's not something I just sat down and wrote, it's somebody came to me with a pitch. Now, we talk to TV, game, movie people all the time. I've had deals that have come and gone. I've got paid for stuff that you guys never heard of. because the deals fell out. I got paid a ridiculous amount of money on an auction about 20 years ago for Fairy Tale. You know, Columbia Pictures. But what good does it do me to say, hey guys, I had a project going to turnaround, so we're never going to make that movie that I got paid for. You know, why bother? Yeah, trust me, we don't keep that stuff secret. You know, if I get a licensing deal on a game, you're going to hear about it. Coming soon to a computer near you.
All right, do we have another question for Raymond? I'm letting these people moderate at the back. Sorry. Hi, sorry, your name?
Hazard, my name's Odd. I'd just like to ask, how have you seen your writing process change because you've been writing for a very long time and been very successful, sort of keeping it all together?
Well, okay, the explanation about how Magician came together is like, okay, that's like rookie writer stuff. You learn. I mean, that's the thing. If you don't learn, you're in the wrong trade. You become more familiar with how a narrative works and what makes your voice unique and where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. And with your weaknesses, you have two choices: either stay the hell away from them or figure out how to make them better. Like the one thing I really had trouble with and I just hated. And for those of you who have been writing a lot or taken writing classes, okay, it's called tableau setting. It's like, he walked in the door and saw John standing over by the window on the left. To John's left was Mary, and at her feet sat the dog. Across the room is okay. In other words, you're telling the reader where everybody is. I have figured out ways to work around that silly stuff because I suck at it. It's terrible. So that's a weakness I've avoided. But the rest of it is what I call writer's muscle memory. I don't need a whole lot of time to sit down and start writing anymore. As long as I don't have other stuff. I don't believe in writer's block, and I just basically went through like 2 years of what most people would call writer's block. No, I had real concrete life problems. And what I've discovered about so-called writer's block is your subconscious is telling you, dude, you got other stuff to take care of. I'm not going to let you get creative until you go pay the rent, or you make up with your girlfriend, or you stop, writing graffiti on school walls, or whatever it is. I really believe that writers are great at having excuses not to write. I really need to go organize my sock drawer, this time by color. I really need about another dozen sharpened pencils, so I better jump in the car and drive down to the stationery store and probably need a new pencil sharpener too. And no. If you're doing that, there's a reason you don't want to write. And that reason may be something important that you're avoiding, or something trivial that you're avoiding, but it's something you really need to take care of. Then you get to the point where you can write despite the crap. I mean, I've got a laptop, and I really don't like the keyboard, unfortunately, but, it's like, I suppose if I really thought about it, I could pack a USB outboard keyboard and a mouse or whatever. But I've got a nice little, MacBook Pro. And I make typos and stuff, but I correct them. But I work on it. But I could sit with that thing in my lap in the back of a bus across the Transvaal, and I could write. It's just, I've been doing it for 30 years. But as far as the evolution, if I'm not careful, I tend to write too brief, too thin, I want to call it. I don't put in quite as much detail as I used to. I tend to avoid description, more than I should. The modern reader prefers dialogue and then narrative, and description is a distant third, but they want some, and they want it to be key, and they want it to be important. You can say he rode through the woods. Well, you do that so many times, it's like, okay, why is this wood different from the last one? So what I would suggest is that we're all going to evolve as writers. You're a better dancer than you were, or you're a better fencer, or you're whatever your skill set is. If you practice, if you improve, if you keep working at it. But sometimes you got to check back and make sure that you haven't wandered too far off of it. But I'd say the biggest single thing is in terms of how my writing has changed. One, because of the way the story evolved through the Rift War, the books got darker. Nastier. As the dread got closer, things got nastier. But you can turn that around and make it work for you. The Dasati. I am really proud of the Dasati. Because the Dasati came out of a discussion with a friend of mine where I used the expression, I saw some weird kid stuff, and I go, well, now I know why tigers eat their young. You know, and the fact is, all cats will kill kittens that are not theirs because it puts the female in heat and they can start a new litter. It's a genetic superiority thing. So tigers really don't eat their own young; they kill others. And then suddenly the conversation turned to, well, you know, how would an intelligent species survive if they kill their own kids? And I said, okay, there's a story in there somewhere. So I created the Dasati, and I had a culture that was predicated upon, you know, we kill the kids because we want the tough ones to survive. And the whole cultural thing about the kid getting to his dad, and once he got to his dad, you know, he was, you know, accepted into the clan because he was a tough boot. That's the other thing too, is you keep yourself fresh by turning stuff around. You don't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Even if you are doing the same thing over and over and over again, disguise it.
Gotcha. Right. Do we have another question? I think there was a question, that gentleman there.
Hi.
I'm sorry, your name?
Sorry, my name is Gustav.
Hi, Christoph.
How was it working with Janny Wurts? How did it happen, and would you ever write sci-fi?
That's 3 questions. Pick one. No, that's fine. We'll throw it to you.
Cheeky. Okay, I met Janny at World Fantasy Con. Actually, I was introduced to her by the guy that she ended up marrying, Don Mates. Well, first of all, I thought she was very attractive, so that got my attention. You know, being a guy and having had copious amounts of beer before the introduction. You know, two more Budweisers, I'd have proposed marriage sight unseen. But anyway, we talked, and she was very sweet and gave me her first book, you know, to read, Sorcerer's Legacy. And I really liked this character she had. She had this female character named Liana, who was really kind of a wishy-washy dish rag kind of woman who was like, oh, mice, you know, or, you know, who evolved into this really tough, nice character. And I thought, that's really cool. I had it in my head that I wanted to do the other side of the Rift War. That's what I thought the project was going to be called, the other side of the Rift War. No, I didn't, but that was how I mentally thought of it. And so I knew that I wanted to do a female character. I wanted a woman protagonist, that's all. And I can't even tell you why. I just knew I wanted to do the other side of the Rift War, and I wanted to be a woman. Well, when I started making a few notes, I realized the big flaw in that is I've never been a 19-year-old girl. Pretty sure, yeah.
Not even with 2 Budweisers.
I'm not even going there. So I was. This is back when it was pen pal time. We actually sent real letters because they just invented the 300 baud modem, but I was using my Apple II and Janny was using. Actually, I had a 2C, so I actually had a shift key. When I first went to Janny's to work with her, I had to go to a little. If any of you are old enough to remember the original Apple II, not even a Plus, I mean the original Apple II, it had no upper-lower case. Because, well, you're not going to write stuff on it, you're going to write code. Yes, Steve. And a guy named Dan Paymar came up with a thing called the Paymar adapter, and for like $50 you bought this thing, and you opened the Apple up and you stuck it in and you soldered one joint, and suddenly, I've got upper and lower case. Because it always seemed silly to me that they put out a computer with a shift key and it wouldn't shift case. So I taught Janny. It took me a year. And I can't, she probably remembers, but I don't remember exactly what I said to Hooker. But I finally got her convinced, because I said, hey, why don't you write this with me? And she said, no, I'll consult. And I said, no, I read your book. Now, that was the hardest work I've ever done. Janny can be a total bite in the butt. She's opinionated, she's determined, she doesn't give up in an argument, and God, the deal was it's my universe, woman. So I'm the boss. Oh, that lasted about, an hour. But here's the thing about Janny that I love. We would fight, and she wouldn't give up, and we'd reach a compromise. And this went on for 3 years and 3 books. And the compromise was always better than what either one of us wanted. Okay. Now, the original plan was, I'm going to write, I was going to write first drafts, and she was going to like rewrite me to do girly stuff or whatever. And then when we got to the place of the plotting, she said, oh, let me do the first draft for the wedding. I've got these great ideas for the wedding. And I went, okay, well, cakes and veils and, I don't know, your father saying stupid stuff after he's had too much to drink. Sure, okay, you did the wedding. Well, she spent some time in Korea, so she has some really good images in her head about what she wanted things to look like and sound like. And from that point forward, I wasn't doing first drafts anymore. We were leapfrogging. Hey, why don't you write to the honeymoon thing, and I'll start with the thing where she comes out all beat up the next morning when we find out that her husband's a total asshole. Okay. Now, I wrote more of Servant of the Empire than she did because she was a little distracted by getting married to Don Mates. She wrote more of Mistress of the Empire than I did because I was busy getting married to Kathy Starbuck. So, like I'm having a blank here for a second. The Highlanders that I put in the Katala was a member of the whatever I called them. Oh, I hate it. Jet lag, or I'm old and senile. Take your pick. And the Haddadi. Anyway, so suddenly I'm going, in my mind when I described them, when I first introduced Katala in Magician, I was, they're I don't know. And I had this weird idea that they were some kind of like White Mountain Apaches, sort of primitive. She turned into a bunch of Celtic warriors, and then got into the whole Celtic mystic thing, and suddenly the Kilrain. I go, okay, I'm pretty sure that's a bar in Dublin, or maybe Edinburgh, Kilrain. Okay, and stuff I never would have dreamt of. During her whole "I'm getting married" thing, I wrote the entire Assault by Arakasi on the Hamoy Tong. Every single word of that is mine. But there's so much stuff in all three of those books, I have no idea who wrote what. It just blended together. So that's the, what was the third question?
I think, would you work with Janny again?
Actually, that's more of an economics question than anything else. It's just that, I first of all, there's nothing we could think of that we want to do together. She's got this massive series that she's finishing up after 20 years. And I blew up the world, so that's a problem. Yeah. No, probably not. I think right now, for whatever reason, I know, actually, that's not true. I know exactly the reason. The collaborations don't sell as well as my solo stuff. Now, it's a relative thing because everything I've ever written is still in print, and I happen to be HarperCollins' senior author, and I never had a book go out of print, 32 years. So we're kind of doing okay there. But in terms of raw numbers, if it's got my name on it, I think they would be okay if Joe Rowlings or Stephen King wanted to write with me. They'd say, okay, yeah, you can do that.
Cool. All right, now we had a question on the front here. Get a mic down.
Mr. Feist, there are a couple of books where you would almost seemingly write in a different world or a different area. For instance, the Daughter of the Empire series or Talon of the Silver Hawk, where it would seem that you're moving away or not actually focusing on the continuous story of Pug and Arutha and whatever the case may be. Isn't that like a risk that a writer takes in your writing?
Yeah, it is. Everything you do in theory. Okay, saying I love. In theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there's a hell of a lot of difference. Okay. In theory, he said. The entire purpose of the narrative is to entertain. So if you go wandering off track, you better be damned entertaining about it. It better be something, that isn't you just find amusing. It's like, I saw a whole Marx Brothers festival, so we're going to stop the middle of this action adventure and do 17 pages of slapstick. Wrong answer, John. Show our contestant their prizes. you can't do that. You can't be indulgent. But if I get off track, I think it's for a reason, and I think it's for a reason that serves the overall narrative. Now, if you find that not to be the case, then I made a wrong judgment. You know, but it's, how do I say this? You can be too linear. You know, you can put the camera as, I think, by the way, very cinematic terms. When I'm writing, I'm seeing movies in my head. You can put the camera on a character's shoulder and just go, you know. Now, at the other extreme, you've got, you know, Bloom wandering the streets of Dublin, seemingly randomly, you know, based loosely upon the Odyssey, and you win prizes for generations for it. When they found the corrected manuscript of James Joyce's Ulysses, I had a agent friend, Virginia Kidd, who said, now this is a woman who read Ulysses, her favorite book of all time by James Joyce. She read it every night. Literally, every night. Not the entire book, obviously. But she would read, and then when she get to the end, she'd go back to page 1. Now, obviously, as a literary agent, she read a lot of other stuff. But every night, before she went to sleep, she would read some pages. And when they announced we found the true corrected one, the one that Joyce wanted published, because the one that got published for years was an earlier iteration of the manuscript, and the newer one had changes in it. And I said, so you're going to read the new one? She said, no. She says, I know that one too well. You know, I'm not sure exactly what my point is there, except to say that, you know, if you wander around Dublin, do it well.
Do we have another question? I think somebody's about to jump out of their seat. All right, we're getting a microphone over to you now. Sorry, your name?
Hi, I'm Stella, and I wanted to know, are we going to find out what happens to the Desati? Because you kind of left
just
it
move
hanging.
the mic further up.
Yeah,
so we
please,
can hear.
thank you. Up close, because I really...
Okay, so
There we go.
I wanted to know, you left the Desati kind of hanging. Are we going to find out what happens? Are you planning to write
Well, the who?
the Desati?
Oh, yeah, right. I have no idea what happened. And
Yeah, I mean,
Right, next question.
And frankly, I pretty much don't care. You know, here's the thing about. Okay, somebody said to me about. This is going back to our world building panel yesterday. You know, as David Berg said, you don't have to show the reader everything. You know, you can have just gigantic backstory that has nothing to do with what you're actually talking about. You know this stuff, and you don't have to show it off. You just have to. It goes to another tenet of writing, which is you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be convincing. If you're writing about naval warfare, you don't have to go off to the War College at Annapolis and spend 4 years. You can go to the library or nowadays go to Google, read a few articles, take some notes, and go, okay, this is what happened. You don't have to recreate the entire Battle of Jutland. You just say, okay, well, this ship went that kind of ship can't go that way, so it's got to go. Okay, fine. The ship went this way, and the reader goes, oh yeah, they know what they're talking about. The best instruction I can give you is that when I did in Rage of a Demon King, the battle outside of the harbor in Krondor, and I just had another one of those moments. The character's name just jumped out of my head. The admiral who was leading the defense. Oh, anybody here remember that guy's name?
No true fans. No, we can't say that.
It'll come to me. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'll go, oh yeah, Admiral Boom. Anyway.
So just make sure you follow Raymond on his tweets, because that'll come out at about, 2 a.m.?
No, probably not. Okay. Anyway. Vicor. Admiral Vicor, yes. He was there like 4 pages, maybe 4.5, and then he gets munched by a demon. I got a kid writing me going, why'd you kill him off? He was great. I could have read a whole book about the guy. Now, I don't have a whole book about the guy. I had 4.5 pages. But the fact that the guy wanted more, the kid wanted more, tells me I did him right. The fact that you want to know more about the Desati means I did them right. Because I have no idea. My only thing about that story was being the environment about why tigers eat their young and how to do a change that has the sort of ripple effect, the opposite of Brexit. where things get better because of what happens. So, the old Dasadi gods are coming back, and the influence of the Dark One is being diminished, and, Valko is now, the supreme leader of the people and all that, And, it's like Kelowna. Kelowna was like a movie set. You'd open the door, there's nothing behind it. Mikimi was always, to me, much deeper because it was this gaming environment I was playing with my buddies in for 4 years. But it's all illusion. It's all smoke and mirrors. If my publishers came and said, I will give you $10 million for a book about the Dasadi, you better believe I'm writing the next day. And I will have a killer story by the time I get done. But I'm saying I personally have no more interest in exploring that world. I might someday. I might get a wild hair. Wow, that young woman 5 years ago in South Africa, maybe a Dasadi book. You never know. I might go back to Mikimia someday. Right now, I have no plans to. But I never close the door on anything that might involve fun or money. At 70 years old, my take on life is, if you're not making me do something like jury duty or pay taxes, it either better be fun or making me a profit. One of the two.
I think what we can take from that, Stella, is that Raymond's open to commissions. So if you can organize, does it have to be USD?
Well, I say 10 million people $1 each, or one guy with 10 million. Either one works for me.
That's a crowdfunding platform right there. Okay, do we have another question down there? Well, let's throw to this side of the room over here.
Hello.
Sorry, what was your name?
My name's Johan.
Hi, Ryan.
And my question is, I think, more about the less fun businessy side of writing. Do you have any advice regarding trusting your editor? Not so much with taking stuff away, but when they want you to add things and you feel it may be dumbing down the scene or the transition or stuff like that.
I can't generalize out because every relationship, okay, your relationship with an editor is a lot like with your therapist or your priest. It's a personal one. The glib answer is if you don't trust your editor, you got the wrong editor. But that may not be that because it's maybe more about your insecurity. I don't know because I don't know you. I don't know your editor. I would say that the first analysis should be: does it make sense? I had a note from one of my editors. I've got at my stage now. I have like 4. I got 2 in New York and 2 in London. They're all really bright people, and I like them all. But it's kind of like editorial by committee. Now, after 32 years in this business and being a multiple bestseller, I don't have to listen as much as a guy trying to sell his first book does. Okay, when Adrian said, "Now cut 50,000 words out of this," I did it. Today I'd go, "Are you joking?" And it's like, okay, well, it's your name on the book, Feist. So, yeah. I got the note saying, I had done like 4 or 5 chapters of King of Ashes, book 1. Why don't you we don't have a strong female character who isn't a wife, who isn't a wife or a barmaid. Have you thought about turning one of those 2 guys into a woman? No. Okay, after Mara of the Acoma, after Miranda, after Sandrina, I don't think I need to justify, lack of strong female characters in my career. I pick and choose. And the reason I do this is that most of the cultures I deal with are inherently sexist. Okay? So I don't do chicks in chainmail, so there are no Red Sonias. I don't do guys in drag, because some of the worst female heroic characters are guys in a dress. That's why I recruited Janny. That's why I said, I need you. Because I could not have created Miranda, and I could not have created Sandrina if I hadn't done Mara first. I had one person say, God, Miranda irritated me. And I said, she was supposed to. She's a bite in the ass. But Pug's in love with her. And I also showed the reasons why he's in love with her. Because she does her own thing. Pug's going, what do you mean you have your own agents, outside the conclave? And it's like, she goes, yeah, I got my own agenda. When you're dealing with long life characters, it's easy to forget. She's older than he is. It's the magic equivalent of a 25-year-old guy marrying a 40-year-old woman. You know, there were moments in that relationship, I never put them on the page, but I'm certain there were moments of intimacy where she was going, look, kid, to a 125-year-old guy. You know, well, I'm 150, boy. You know. If your editor says something to you, I suspect the first reaction is to stop for a second and reflect and say, okay. And then if it doesn't make sense to you, don't argue, ask. People will really work with you if you ask instead of tell. So you say, okay, well, why do you think that's a valuable change? What do you see being the result? If they can't articulate, I'd say, just say, oh, it's an idea, no. If they do articulate, then it's either, oh yeah, fuck, that makes sense, sure. Or, well, I guess the last thing I can tell you is that when you look at change, avoid change for the sake of change. It makes it better. Okay, if you're, writing a dog and the editor wants to make it a better dog, fine. Don't let the editor make it a cat. Okay? That's a really lousy metaphor. Okay.
All right, we have time for one last question, but it's got to be quick. I see a hand down there. So what was your name?
Hi, my name is Vanna. A lot of writers talk about the...
This doesn't sound quick, Vanna.
It's going to be quick. A lot of writers talk about the difference between an outliner and a discoverer writer. So my question is twofold. Are you an outliner or discoverer? And also with regards to that...
okay, I'm really having trouble understanding. I think the mic is in a weird place. So it's kind of popping.
So we're talking about an outward discoverer as a writer.
An outliner or a discoverer
writer?
writer?
Okay. Well, none. I just sort of close my eyes and go like this.
Random hitting of keys.
Yeah, and if I'm lucky, I don't knock over the wine. No, seriously, I think I don't like outlines. I just don't feel the need. And I think part of that is that I grew up in a film environment. My dad was a director-producer. And outlines to me are a lot like storyboards. And so for me, storyboards come after the script. You don't break down the script. Okay, I have a thing on my Facebook page, if you want to go digging for it, where somebody asked me a question about plotting. Okay, the really short answer is the difference between plotting and story is that a plot is king dies, queen dies. A story is a king dies, queen dies of a broken heart. Okay, now, what does that mean? It means you can take something and break it down plot elements without even analyzing the quality of the story. Great plot, lousy story. It can happen. It's easy to do with film. So on my page on Facebook, what I do is I break down Captain America: Winter Soldier. And the reason I do that is, hands down, the best Marvel film ever. Secondly, it's not an action-adventure movie. It's a freaking Hitchcock movie. It's a suspense thriller. And actually, if you listen to the musical score, it's not even scored like an action-adventure film. It's scored like a Hitchcock movie. Whoever scored that sucker was probably a fan of Bernard Herrmann. And the plot drives like a locomotive. Every single plot element is just boom, 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 boom. So I believe that you know the plot internally. You have an idea. Again, we go back to what I said earlier. Know where the story ends. Point towards that. And then the fun is discovering. But here's the thing. I intuitively know this works as a plot or it doesn't work as a plot. Because I can always do the story. I've been doing this for 32 years. I know how to write a coherent English sentence, and I got a pretty good idea of how to be entertaining. So my prime concern as I discover is plot. So in a sense, I guess it's a blend. I intuitively have an outline. It may not be obviously apparent to me at every single thing, but I know I have a kid in my current book, and he's got to get from here to there, and I got from there to there, and then that turned that way, and it's going here. Now they're going off here to hide, and then they're coming out. Okay. Part of the outline thing that you can do internally without actually sitting down with a deck of cards or on a computer or whatever is understand that everything that you do is the consequence of what came before. What was that? There's something really funny that somebody did years ago where I wish I could remember the gag. It'll come to me like 4 a.m. But it was an action adventure thing where people were being chased in a thing, and they got someplace, and they went and did something else, and we never got back to what happened with the chase. My last story. somebody asked me once, what's the best opening for a book? Max Schulman, one of the funniest American writers ever, back in the 50s. He wrote a book called Sleep Till Noon. And the opening of the book is bang, 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 bang. 4 shots rang out as hot lead ripped into my groin, and I was off on the adventures of a lifetime. But first, let me tell you about myself. And of course, you get all the way to the end of the book, and he never goes back to the opening. It's 100% gratuitous. You know. Anyway, are we done?
I think that's it. Guys, Raymond E. Feist.
Thank you.
From my side, Raymond, thank you so much. Icon 2016, we've taken a step up here. I know your schedule is kind of tight with Comic-Con coming up, making sure that you're ready for the madness that is going to be Comic-Con. So we really appreciate you coming back out. We hope you've had a fantastic time. Raymond will be on another panel tomorrow, The Rise of Speculative Fiction. You're going to be on the panel with Sanjana Singh and Fred Stratum. So if you enjoyed this, make sure you get back there. We get Ray's sage wisdom in relation to the rise of speculative fiction. But for now, we've got to say goodbye for a couple of moments. We'll be back in around about 10 or 9 minutes' time for the godfather of South African comics, Moray Rhoda, as he leads a panel on the state of comics in South Africa. So stay tuned for that. We're watching, streaming live from Icon 2016, live at Gallagher Convention Center all weekend. Make sure you get down here for a range of amazing events, free events once you get through the door. Brought to you by Always On Wi-Fi, super fast Wi-Fi wherever you need it. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Hi, I'm Les Allen from GeekXP. If you liked this video, please be so kind as to like the video itself down below. And if you want to get updates on more of these types of videos from the GeekXP channel, please hit subscribe. Thanks very much, guys.